where you are in your subculture. And so that's what I try to get across to them, and that's what the other teachers try to get across to them, that this is where you're going to live. Now, you can have a negative attitude, and that won't get you out any sooner. It may get you to stay a little longer. And you can have a positive attitude and live from day to day learning and helping other people and being, as they say, being Christian witnesses within the subculture. And so it's quite interesting. In dealing with them, I gave some questionnaires, and I'll just read you some of the questionnaires. And some of the surveys or the questionnaires that I have here are questionnaires that they themselves responded to. I had the editor to simply put in just as they wrote whatever they wrote, and so they put it down just as they wrote it. For an example, what has been the most difficult adjustments here? Trying to deal with privacy and adjusting to dealing with 108 individuals in a housing zone. It can drive you crazy. Now, this is all in their handwriting. It'll drive you crazy. I have adjusted to it for 33 years. Can you imagine being in prison for 33 years? You know, and talking about human development, which I teach, course which I teach, very often one of them will say, well, Dr. Hubbell, I don't have a family. You know, ordinarily we start with childhood and go all the way adolescence and young adulthood, middle adulthood, and so forth. I don't have that. And I can't expect to have that. And yet they are people. But they are deprived of this, but this is because of their violation. And so I'm not defending them and trying to be protective of them. I'm simply saying this is the way prison life is. But no matter how prison life is or what prison life is like, they're still people. It doesn't make any difference. They're still people. I have worked in mental institutions, and I've spent just a lot of time in mental institutions as a studying student. And I had to tell myself over and over, these people who walk up and down the halls with or without medication, these are still people. They may be chattering in a language I don't understand, but they're still people. One of them came to me and he said, Dr. Hubbell, I want to give you something. I said, okay, what you going to give me? I'm going to give you $1 million. I said, well, that's nice, you know. Somebody that's nice. So I said, okay. And so he handed me a little toy coin. He said, this is $1 million, but don't tell anybody I gave it to you, because they'll want some money also. Well, you have all kinds of experiences like this. On another occasion, this mental institution, this was in Kentucky, and there was a guard who just liked to beat them up. He just loved to beat them up. He'd back them up against the wall and beat them up, knock them around. Well, that wasn't too kosher according to my idea about what should be done in a mental institution. So I went to the head doctor and I said, look, he's beating these students, he's beating these patients up. It just shouldn't be. He said, will you come to a staffing meeting and tell us that? I said, I will if you'll bring him and have him sit across the table from me, and I'll tell you about him in his presence. And that we did, and of course he lost his job. Now, how can I make the most out of being here at Parchman? After I graduate, I'd like to work with the chapel department and the inmates, and I would like to be there to help youngsters out in the name of Jesus Christ. Okay, so here's one prisoner. What have you brought here? What brought you here? In his writing now, what brought you here? My addiction to sexual desires and sins, lying, stealing. I was convicted on a sex charge. I thank God for forgiving me. God is gracious and good. I can make it right one day at a time, and if I've offended anybody, I want to do something about it. That's what he said. What has been the most difficult adjustments here at Parchman? The inmates crowd around me, doing wrong, and I'm trying to do right, and they're always cursing and smoking and other things. They're not allowed to smoke. but they smoked. They're not allowed to have drugs. In fact, today, I went out today, had to be there at 9 o'clock, show all my badges and so forth, and I went in and it was quiet, nobody was there. And so finally somebody came and I said, "Where's everybody?" Well, it's lockdown. Well, lockdown meant they had to stay, 108 of them in each of their units, they had to stay in each of their units, and so they had to stay there. All right, until they searched everybody. And so I sat there and talked to one of the fellows while we were sitting in the office. But this is lockdown. And they search them, and they'll have a search time. In fact, they have a holding unit where if they've gone anywhere outside the premises, they'll bring them to this holding unit, and then they'll search them, they'll make them strip down, and so they have little booths, and they'll strip them down and be sure they're not bringing anything contraband into the prison system. Okay, so that's a part of what we have here, and these are the surveys written in their own hands, and I chose to put it in the book just the way it is. And then the last part is about families of origin. I asked them to tell me the stories of their families, the families of origin, where they came from. And so I have about 25 stories written in their own hand, but I had it typewritten so that you, the readers, anybody who wants to read it, will be able to read it without difficulty, because some of the material is in their handwriting and it's difficult to read. Okay, so here is a story, family of origin. The family in our culture, more often than not, consists of an adult male and an adult female. Either through planning or through happiness, conception takes place, followed by night. This is his writing. The only change we made, we took out names, because in some cases they named their mothers and their fathers and so forth, and they named where they were. So we took those out. Hopefully the end result is a healthy unit. Obviously the embryo and fetus does not choose. It gets a little academic here. When the family of origin is found or formed, the family members, particularly the adults, husband, wife, and father, mother, after having their genetic contribution, exercise influence over the newborn. He goes on, he gets a little academic here. The reality leads an observer to ask, who is responsible for the good or the bad outcome of children? Father, mother alone, siblings themselves, any combination of the above? The reality leads one to conclude all contribution to the singular, it says all contribution to the emotional development of the offspring. And the relevant real question to ask is the child who develops into adult responsible for himself, or at least partially responsible for his behavior, good, bad, or in between? If the answer to these questions cannot be made conclusively, it will be assumed with a degree of certainty that the family of origin, individually or as a unit, had an input in the development of the child. Because the acceptance of this assumption, I, as a professor, required, talk about me, that each incarcerated student describe his family of origin. Therefore, the 25 narratives which follow are written by the Parchman inmates and later typed in without correction. This is the introduction. Excuse me. Now then, let me go over here to one of the stories. The best place to start when discussing the success and failure of my family of origin would have to be with the head of the household. My father's story is a mixture of both failure and success, though not in that order. As a matter of fact, some of what I will contribute as success of my father in the end turned out to be the very cause of my failures. I don't know much about my father's upbringing or childhood, so what will be addressed here is my father's life as I knew it. The accounts will come directly from my childhood experiences and not exhausted. There will be successes and failures in my father's life. One of the successes I contribute to my father is the fact that he was consistent in the workplace. Although I was greatly inspired by my father's diligence in the workplace, it was because of this very reason that my father came to be his greatest failure. Because my dad worked 5 to 3. Hardly I ever got to spend time with him. By the time my father came home, he was tired. All he wanted to do was drink and watch television. By the time the game was over, it was time to go to bed. My dad had to go to sleep early in order to get up early. And there were occasional moments of fellowship, but they were very few and far between. So these are the stories that they tell in their own words. the inmates themselves. And so that I have 25 stories here in their own language, and I wanted you to, or the reader, to get a feel for how they feel about their families growing up. What if you have any questions about all this stuff I've shared?
When was this book written? Is this
This
one of
year.
your new books?
This year.
Oh, this is a new book, okay.
Right here. Red hot.
This is the head.
Yeah.
But anyway, the gist is prisoners are people.
And these are the prisoners now, are some of the
Yeah.
stories from back when you were there?
No, these are prisoners right now. In fact, what I did, there's stories, families of origin and other stories that they put in here. I read it to them. And I said, is it okay? And they said, fine. So I got their permission, 100%. So there's nothing in here that would reveal anything that they didn't want revealed.
Are you at it? What unit are you?
30.
30. Do you still have a library there now?
Yeah, in the classroom where I teach, yes. Yeah.
I was there for 2 years as a librarian.
Were you the librarian in Unit 30?
I was, for 2 years.
Well, then they have
We
a,
automated it, we got it started there.
they have a,
Went away.
they have one of the prisoners who takes care of the library there. But one librarian. Yeah, and the library is just alongside the wall. We're not talking about a lot of books, and we're not talking about current books necessarily. I mean, they've been books written in the 1940s, 50s, 60s, whatever else.
Well, they had, at one time, they got federal funds to buy books, so that's how we funded the library. But when that went away, there was no more.
And because the prisoners themselves will often say, Dr. Hubbell, bring us some of your books. So I bring them some books, because they don't have many modern books.
Reverend Hubbell, I'm glad to know you have a security guard, because you know, I taught for 25 years and I never had security, and I had 25 million on myself.
Where was it?
Classroom.
Where was it?
Department 26, Unit 26.
Unit 26?
Now,
You know, things.
Did you ever experience any?
You know, it's sort of like Reverend Hubbell says, after years, they get a certain respect for you, and then they come and I never had a problem. But I did transfer the last 3 years because the young gang members were coming. I used to have, when I start my treatment, and they say, now don't worry, Miss Strong, half the place is gangster disciples and the others white swords, but we got you, we take care of you.
In this subculture, they have their gang. And I have them listed in the book of the gangs. And the gangs function to protect their own, or to gain some advantage for their own. For example, if they want to sit in a different place in the dining room table, the gang members will see to it they get to sit in a different place. Or if then they want certain privileges, they'll use their muscle to get certain privileges. So they have gangs in this subculture. So you might say subculture and subculture. Anything else? Any other question? Yes, ma'am.
All right, is there a reason that so many of the guards are female?
Yes, there is. They have to be between 18, usually between, say, at least 18, and usually between 18 and 25. And the men who qualify, most of the men who qualify, who might apply, are persons who are in violation, they've been in prison, and they're not allowed to do any work. The females are the only ones who have a clean record. And you probably raised the question about, you know, are there any inappropriate actions? Oh, of course there are. I asked the guard, I'd say, and I'm talking about you, but tell me what goes on next door, and just tell me what goes on. And so they'll share with me some inappropriate actions. But by and large, they do a respectable job. I'm real pleased.
How do they get cigarettes and all these other, huh? The guards smuggle them in.
The guards smuggle them in, people coming in, and when I go in, I have to stand like this in an x-ray machine, all right? And so the x-ray machine, then I have to go out and sit down just in case I've got some contraband in my breeches. All right? And then after that, I have to go and
Or
stand up,
elsewhere.
and the female guard she'll hand search me. I mean, she'll go all over me. And I've told Kid Beth, I say, sometimes I say, just stay there a little while longer.
And what kind of salaries do the?
You have those dressed in blue, and they're the guards, and you have those dressed in white, and then the lieutenants and captains, whatever else. I'm guessing, I've heard them say $25,000–$30,000. Now this is just an approximation.
Have things tightened up since the commissioner's been anointed or left?
It doesn't get that far down. Other than the prisoners will say, they're as bad as we are.
Well, they got a lot tighter entrance in and out of Parchman, I know. One time, almost anybody could drive in and out there without a lot of questions, and now they've gotten really strict.
No, they're real strict now. When I went in today, and I go in every week, when I went in today, the female guard came out, and I happened to have this on my briefcase. She said, "Where's your tag?" Well, I've been coming in all this time, and I got a tag. So I got out of the car, got it off my briefcase, but here's the tag. And then I've got a decal on my car, and so I can get in. Then when I come out, I have to open up the trunk, and they go through everything in the trunk.
Even though they know you.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Well, they know you bring in cigarettes and stuff.
Yeah.
Contraband. Yes, ma'am.
We had a concrete place years ago, and they actually got two, prisoners on work release. They still have that program. The one-
Limited.
One was manslaughter because he killed his father because he was killing
Uh-huh.
his mother. And the other one was armed robbery and armed robbery. And those were the two best concrete drivers we have ever, they were so glad to get out, and they were exemplary. And so, like you said, they're people.
Yeah, there are limitations to work outside, but we have them around here. Yeah, I saw one this morning here in the city of Cleveland, in the green. They have the green circles around, and these have more privileges than those who have the black circles, and those with the red circles are very limited. All right, any other questions before we go to the next book? Yes, ma'am.
When I was raising 13,